Have you ever wondered how much a simple act of kindness can change a life? Not just in a small way, but in a way that shifts your entire perspective on people, on community, and even on yourself. I used to think that real change only came from big, dramatic moments, major life events, grand gestures, or years of hard work. But then, something happened that made me realize just how powerful the smallest, most unexpected connections can be. Let me take you back to a time in my life when I felt completely invisible. I was living in the same house I'd been in for years, but it might as well have been a different world. My days were quiet, almost too quiet. I'd wake up, make my coffee, and look out the window at the street below, watching neighbors come and go, but never really feeling like I was part of it all. I'd nod politely if I passed someone in the hallway or on the sidewalk, but that was about it. I told myself I was fine with it. After all, I'd always been independent, maybe even a little private. But the truth was, I was lonely. Not the kind of loneliness that comes from being alone for a few hours, but the kind that settles in your bones, that makes even the sunniest days feel a little gray. I missed the feeling of belonging, of being seen, of having someone to share the little moments with. Maybe you know that feeling too. I remember one particular morning, standing at my window, watching the world wake up. I saw a neighbor I'd never really spoken to before, just a familiar face, someone I'd seen in passing. They were out in their garden, humming to themselves, completely at ease. I wondered what their life was like, if they ever felt the same kind of invisible I did. That day, I had no idea that a simple hello, a small gesture, would set off a chain of events that would change everything for me. I didn't know that person I barely noticed would become one of the most important people in my life. I didn't know that kindness could be so powerful, or that community could be built one small moment at a time. If you've ever felt alone, or wondered if you really matter to the people around you, I hope you'll stay with me for this story. Because what happened next taught me that connection can come from the most unexpected places, and sometimes, all it takes is one neighbor, one act of kindness, to remind you that you're not alone. Let me paint a picture of what my life looked like before everything changed. I lived in a quiet neighborhood, the kind where the houses all look a little bit alike, and the trees line the streets in neat, careful rows. My home was comfortable, filled with memories, photos on the walls, souvenirs from trips I'd taken, the familiar creak of the floorboards in the hallway. But as the years went by, the house started to feel bigger, and I started to feel smaller inside it. Most mornings, I'd wake up to the sound of birds outside my window. I'd shuffle into the kitchen, make myself a cup of coffee, and sit at the table, staring out at the world. Sometimes I'd see a neighbor walking their dog, or kids riding their bikes to school. I'd watch the mail carrier make their rounds, the same routine every day. Life was happening all around me, but I felt like I was watching it through glass. My days had a certain rhythm, but it was a lonely one. I'd do my chores, laundry, dishes, maybe a little gardening if the weather was nice. I'd run errands, but I rarely stopped to chat with anyone. I'd go to the grocery store, nod at the cashier, and head home. Evenings were the hardest. The sun would set, the house would grow quiet, and I'd find myself reaching for the TV remote, just to fill the silence. I wasn't always this way. There was a time when my house was full family dinners, friends dropping by, laughter echoing down the hallway. But as life changed, kids growing up and moving out, friends relocating, loved ones passing on, the house emptied out, and so did my days. I told myself I was fine, that I liked the peace and quiet, but deep down, I missed the noise, the mess, the feeling of being needed. I knew my neighbors by sight, but not by name. We'd exchange polite waves or a quick good morning if we crossed paths, but that was the extent of it. I'd see them tending their gardens, walking their dogs, or carrying groceries inside, but I never really thought about what their lives were like. I assumed everyone else was busy, content, wrapped up in their own worlds. There was a part of me that wanted to reach out, to make a connection, but I didn't know how. I worried about being a bother, about not knowing what to say. So I kept to myself, convincing myself that I was just fine on my own. But the truth was, I was lonely. I missed the feeling of being part of something bigger than myself. I missed the small moments of connection, a shared laugh, a helping hand, a friendly chat over the fence. I missed feeling seen. And so day after day, I watched the world go by from my window, not realizing that everything was about to change. That the person I'd barely noticed, the neighbor humming in their garden, would soon become the friend who reminded me what it meant to belong. It was a Tuesday morning, one of those days where the sky can't decide if it wants to rain or shine. I was out in my front yard, half-heartedly pulling weeds from the flower bed. Gardening had become more of a routine than a passion for me, just something to fill the time. I remember feeling a little grumpy that day. My back ached, and the weeds seemed to multiply no matter how many I pulled. That's when I heard a gentle humming coming from next door. It was a tune I didn't recognize, but it was cheerful, almost contagious. I glanced over the hedge and saw my neighbor, someone I'd seen countless times, but never really spoken to, kneeling in their own garden, hands deep in the soil, completely absorbed in their work. For a moment, I hesitated. I thought about just going back inside. But something about the scene made me pause. Maybe it was the way the sunlight caught the flowers in their yard. Or maybe it was just the simple, happy sound of someone enjoying their morning. Whatever it was, I found myself lingering, watching as they worked. Suddenly, my neighbor looked up and caught my eye. Instead of the usual polite nod, they gave me a big, genuine smile. "Good morning," they called out, their voice warm and inviting. I felt a little awkward, but I managed to smile back. "Good morning," I replied, my voice a bit uncertain. They stood up, brushed the dirt from their hands, and walked over to the fence that separated our yards. "I always see you out here," they said, "but I don't think we've ever really met. I'm Sam." They reached out a hand and I shook it, introducing myself in return. There was a brief, comfortable silence. Then Sam glanced at the weeds in my hand and grinned. "Looks like you're fighting the same battle I am," they joked. I laughed, surprised at how easy it felt to talk to them. We chatted for a few minutes about gardening, how the weeds always seem to win, how the tomatoes never ripen as quickly as you want, how the squirrels are always one step ahead. Before I knew it, Sam was offering me a cutting from one of their favorite plants. "It's a little thing, but it brightens up my garden every year," they said. "Maybe it'll do the same for yours." I accepted, touched by the gesture. It was such a small thing, a simple plant. A few kind words, but it felt like the first real connection I'd had in a long time. That day, something shifted. I went back inside with a smile on my face and a new plant in my hand. I found myself looking forward to seeing Sam again, to sharing more stories over the fence. For the first time in a while, I felt a spark of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone as I thought. It's funny how a single moment, a smile, a hello, a shared joke can open the door to something so much bigger. I didn't know it then, but that morning was the beginning of a friendship that would change my life in ways I never expected. After that first real conversation with Sam, something in my daily routine shifted. I found myself looking out the window more often, hoping to catch a glimpse of them in their garden. It wasn't long before our paths crossed again. This time, I was taking out the trash, and Sam was watering their roses. They waved, and I walked over, feeling a little less shy than before. We started talking about the weather, then about our gardens, and soon about all sorts of things, favorite recipes, old family traditions, even the best way to keep squirrels out of the bird feeder. Our chats became a regular part of my day. Sometimes they were just a few minutes, sometimes they stretched into half an hour, leaning over the fence as the sun set and the air cooled. One afternoon, Sam knocked on my door with a plate of homemade cookies. "I made too many," they said with a wink, "and I thought you might like some." We sat on my porch, sipping tea and sharing stories. I learned that Sam had moved to the neighborhood a few years ago after retiring, and that they too had felt a bit out of place at first. We laughed about our gardening mishaps and swapped tips for keeping plants alive during the summer heat. As the weeks went by, our friendship grew. We started helping each other with little things. Sam would bring in my mail if I was out, and I'd water their plants when they went to visit family. We shared extra vegetables from our gardens, swapped books, and even started a friendly competition to see who could grow the biggest tomato. But it wasn't just about the practical help. It was the small, everyday moments that made the biggest difference. On days when I felt down, Sam seemed to sense it. They'd invite me over for coffee or just sit with me in the garden, not needing to fill the silence with words. On days when Sam was feeling low, I'd return the favor, showing up with a slice of cake or a listening ear. We started to look out for each other in ways that went beyond neighborly politeness. When I caught a cold, Sam showed up with homemade soup and checked in every day until I was better. When Sam's car wouldn't start one morning, I drove them to their appointment and waited with them, just to keep them company. Through these small acts of kindness, a real sense of trust and belonging grew between us. I realized that I was looking forward to each new day, not just for the routine, but for the chance to connect with someone who truly cared. My world, which had felt so small and quiet, was opening up again. It's amazing how a friendship can grow from the simplest beginnings: a smile, a shared joke, a plate of cookies. With every little moment, Sam reminded me that connection doesn't have to be complicated or dramatic. Sometimes it's just about being there, showing up, and letting someone know they matter. And as our friendship deepened, I began to see my neighborhood and myself in a whole new light. As the months passed, my friendship with Sam became one of the brightest parts of my life. We had settled into a comfortable rhythm, sharing stories, helping each other out, and simply enjoying each other's company. But I didn't realize just how much I had come to rely on that connection until the day everything seemed to fall apart. It was late autumn, and the days were growing shorter. One morning, I received a phone call that shook me to my core. An old friend from out of town had passed away unexpectedly. The news hit me hard. I felt a wave of grief and shock, and suddenly, all the loneliness I thought I'd left behind came rushing back. The house felt colder, the silence heavier than ever. I tried to go about my day as usual, but I couldn't shake the sadness. I didn't want to burden anyone with my feelings, so I kept to myself, barely leaving the house. I skipped my usual walk in the garden, and for a few days, I didn't even open the curtains. I just let the world pass by, feeling numb and alone. But Sam noticed. On the third day, there was a gentle knock at my door. When I opened it, Sam stood there, holding a small pot of flowers from their garden. "I haven't seen you outside in a while," they said softly. "I just wanted to check in and see if you're okay." At first, I tried to brush it off, but Sam didn't push. They just sat with me on the porch, quietly, letting me know they were there. After a while, the words started to come. I told Sam about my friend, about the loss, about how it brought up old feelings of loneliness and grief. Sam listened, really listened, without judgment or interruption. Then, Sam shared a story of their own, about losing someone close and how hard it had been to reach out for support. They told me how much it had meant when a neighbor had simply shown up, just to sit with them in the quiet. "Sometimes," Sam said, "the best thing we can do is just be there for each other." That afternoon, we didn't solve any problems or make the pain go away. But I felt lighter, just knowing someone cared enough to notice, to reach out, and to sit with me in my sadness. Sam's kindness didn't erase my grief, but it reminded me that I wasn't alone. In the days that followed, Sam continued to check in, dropping off a meal, inviting me for tea, or just sending a quick message to say they were thinking of me. Their small acts of kindness helped me find my footing again. I realized that true friendship isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up, especially when it matters most. That was the turning point for me. I understood, in a way I never had before, how powerful it is to have someone in your corner. Sam's kindness didn't just help me through a difficult time, it changed the way I saw myself and my place in the world. I wasn't just a bystander in my own neighborhood anymore. I was part of a community, and I mattered. And as I healed, I found myself wanting to give back, to be that source of comfort and connection for someone else. Because sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can truly change a life. After that turning point with Sam, something inside me shifted. I realized that the kindness I'd received didn't just help me heal, it inspired me to look outward, to notice others in my community who might also be feeling alone or in need of a little support. It started with small things. One morning, I noticed an elderly neighbor struggling to carry groceries up her front steps. Before, I might have hesitated, worried about intruding. But now, I walked right over and offered to help. She smiled with relief, and we ended up chatting for a few minutes about her favorite recipes and the weather. That simple act led to more conversations, and soon, I was checking in on her every week, sometimes bringing over a homemade treat or just sitting with her for a cup of tea. I also began to notice the single dad down the street, always rushing to get his kids to school on time. One day, when I saw him looking frazzled, I offered to watch his kids for an hour so he could run errands in peace. He was so grateful, and the kids brought a burst of energy and laughter into my home that I hadn't realized I'd missed. Inspired by Sam's example, I started organizing small gatherings in our neighborhood, nothing fancy, just coffee mornings or potluck dinners in the backyard. At first, only a few people showed up, but word spread, and soon our little get-togethers became a regular event. People who had lived side by side for years, but barely spoken, were now sharing stories, swapping recipes, and even helping each other with home repairs or garden projects. I saw how one act of kindness could lead to another, and another, like ripples spreading out from a single stone dropped in a pond. The sense of isolation that had once hung over our street began to lift. People started waving hello, stopping to chat, and looking out for one another in ways big and small. And it wasn't just about what I was doing for others. I found that the more I reached out, the more I received in return. When I had a minor surgery, neighbors brought over meals and checked in on me. When my birthday rolled around, I was surprised with a homemade cake and a chorus of voices singing from my front yard. I felt truly seen and valued. Not just by Sam, but by a whole community that had grown around us. Sam and I often talked about how different things felt now. "It's amazing," Sam said one evening as we watched the sun set from my porch, "how much good can come from just one person deciding to reach out." We both knew that our friendship had been the spark, but it was the willingness to keep that kindness moving forward that had transformed our neighborhood. Looking back, I realized that connection doesn't have to start with a grand gesture. Sometimes it's as simple as a smile, a helping hand, or a shared cup of tea. And when you open yourself up to others, you never know how far those ripples of kindness will travel.
Looking back, it's almost hard to believe how much my life changed because of one neighbor. A simple act of kindness. What started as a smile over the fence and a shared cut-in from a garden grew into a friendship that not only helped me through some of my darkest days, but also opened my heart to a whole community I'd never really known before. I used to think that connection was something that just happened, or that it was reserved for people who were naturally outgoing. But I know that it's built moment by moment, through small gestures and a willingness to reach out of in when it feels a little uncomfortable at first. Sam taught me that you don't have to fix someone else's problems or have all the right words. Sometimes just being there, listening, or offering a small kindness is enough. And when you do that, you give others permission to do the same. That's how community grows, or not through big events or grand plans, but through everyday moments of care and attention. I also learned that it's never too late to make a new friend, to start over, or to become part of something bigger than yourself. No matter your age or your circumstances, you can be the spark that starts a ripple of kindness in your own corner of the world. So, if you're watching this and feeling a little lonely, or if you've ever wondered whether you really matter to the people around you, I want you to know you do. Sometimes all it takes is one small step, a hello, a smile, a helping hand to change not just your own life, but someone else's too. I'd love to hear your stories. Have you ever experienced a small act of kindness that made a big difference? Or have you been that neighbor for someone else? Please share your experiences in the comments below. You never know who might be inspired by your words. And if you're feeling inspired, I challenge you to reach out to someone in your own community this week. Maybe it's a neighbor you've never spoken to, or someone you see every day but haven't really gotten to know. Offer a smile, a kind word, or a simple gesture of help. You might be surprised at the difference it makes, not just for them, but for you as well. Thank you for spending this time with me, and for being part of this community. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a little encouragement today. Together, we can keep those ripples of kindness moving forward. Take care, and remember, sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change a life, including your own.